The Race and Social Justice Initiative, also known as RSJI, was formed in 2004 and was the first municipal initiative in the nation to explicitly confront racism in city programs and policies. The Race and Social Justice Initiative builds on decades of grassroots organizing and would not be possible without the courageous leadership and imagination of many city employees, community members, organizers, and activists who were an integral part of the initiative's history.
The first mayor under the Race Social Justice Initiative was Mayor Greg Nichols. He used the phrase that he wanted to get his own house in order.
Andrew Lofton and Tim Cease called me up to the mayor's office, and they said essentially what the mayor wants to do is, starting with city government, end all forms of racism in city government and in the city. And I go, is that a job? And I'm just all kinds of things going through my head. And one of the things going through my head is, so if I haven't ended racism in the next fiscal year, are y'all gonna fire me? So we sat down, and that's kind of how it all started.
In the late 90s, Washington passed the first anti-affirmative action measure, I-200. It was also the period of marriage equality. And in Seattle, there was this internal imperative in the city around how are we going to take this on? And in that way, it was a really perfect moment to think about how do you unite these ideas of race and social justice.
We started December 2nd, 2002. There was no other initiative in the country. There's nobody called.
From the get-go with the Race and Social Justice Initiative, we were really clear that our goal is to work on systemic racism, to change the policies and practices that have created racial inequities.
The notion and the idea that there are a small group of people who have to be in control so that we can have a civil society, I think we have to acknowledge and recognize that that's false.
And whether we inherit from our past a history of oppression or a history of privilege, it's inheritance. The question is, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do about it?
There are no straight lines or perfect circles in nature. It's always messy. It's the messiness that keeps us from being able to control it, right? But if we're going to have messiness, we have to have that ability to adapt. We have to have that ability to respond, not just that need to make the thing go away.
I think that the rest of the country looks at us. I think what concerns me is the ways that I think we can begin to pat ourselves on the back, almost breaking our arm off, patting ourselves on the back.
Sometimes it feels like it's a little bit of a veneer of progressiveness, because when you look at the actual disproportionalities that we see in Seattle, it's the same racial inequities as anywhere else in the country. Regardless of what indicator you're looking at, there's deep and pervasive racial inequities. So it's not just a matter of sort of spouting some words, but that we have to be laser focused on changing actual conditions. Because even outside of change efforts that are focused on race, most organizational change efforts fail. And so when we're talking about changing the fundamental nature of local government, there were some people who loved it and some people who really thought it was ridiculous, it wasn't needed.
We asked all the white people to go in one room, and we asked all the people of color to go in another room. And the white people are supposed to discuss how they can be allies in terms of us doing this work. And the people of color are supposed to be talking about how we can overcome internalized oppression and all of that stuff. Well, the white people got in a room and just talked about their fear. And the black people got in a room and talked about how glad they weren't the white people. And but that's how it started. I'm not saying that eventually worked.
We had people who said things like, I don't see color, I just treat people like people. And while I recognize that that is a sentiment that people are saying from a perspective of trying to be equitable, if we don't see color, that means that we're not going to be able to change conditions.
So a lot of it A lot of it was to get people to be forgiving, to see possibility.
We didn't want to just go back to our desks and make the same decisions we always had, but the goal of doing training is to change what we do.
What I see in employees is the more training that they take, that they tend to be far more open to looking at their programs and really taking these things into account. And the more time we spend in it, the more likely employees at every level are to say, we need to take this into consideration. I don't think we've looked at this.
That made it real. And if I'm being honest, it's why we're having this conversation 20 years later, because if it had just stayed a leadership initiative, it wouldn't have sustained.
Council Bill 120525, establishing the Race and Social Justice Initiative as city policy.
So today we are celebrating the pioneers who kind of blazed that trail for us, and almost 20 years later are bestowing our recognition by making this initiative city law.
Councilmember Mosqueda.
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
And Council President Juarez.
Aye.
9 in favor, none opposed.
Nothing allows us to overcome colonial systems of oppression like actual practice. And so our work really is about how do we move from theory and into practice in ways that helps us widen the circle of human concern as we think about who are the persecuted and prevented, and what's the work that we have to do to make sure that they're thought about, that they're included.
The work that I did, that others did, that it continues to address systemic racism, like it's life affirming.
It was hard, and we knew it was necessary. And so it was the most difficult thing I've been through, but it's the most rewarding thing in my life.
RSJI is not going away because you can't pull the rug out from under it because there's too many people standing on it.
What we're about building community. This whole thing is about building community.